like one of my favorite quotes is just in this world but not of it, and that's just my experience. It's like, yes, I'm in this world, but there's also a part of me that cannot be satiated by this worldly experience. It's like the holy ache, so to speak. It's like I need my connection. I need to cultivate my relationship to God in order to get that piece of my heart back. Like, if I'm just on the somatic level and just the scientific healing your nervous system, that's wonderful, but something would be missing. And this is where my work comes in. It's not for everybody. That's clear. It's for those who are yearning and aching for something that this world doesn't have to offer. And this is what we are, diving in, tuning in. It's like, why do you read poetry? Why do we do art?
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Going Out Looking In, the podcast where we're exploring the human experience through conscious conversations. My name is Maxi, I'm your host, and today we're deep diving into the world of the nervous system, of somatics, of prayer, spirituality, our relationship with the divine, with God, embodied here and now with presence on this earth in his incarnation, and men's work. All of this is being discussed with my guest Felix Wittmann. Felix is a somatic practitioner and coach. He is a alternative healing practitioner, aka, for all the German listeners, Heilpraktiker. He's a mystic, some sort of a poet, and somebody who is deeply interested in the deeper things in life. Someone who has reached out to me on social media to connect with me via my marketing business. So that was the initial outreach. Can you build a website for me? And it turned into a beautiful co-creation and relationship. I will call it friendship now. And he's part of my men's circle. And Felix is somebody I truly admire for his integrity with God and his seeking, his search for truth in that regard. I'll talk to that in a little bit. This conversation went into various realms. We are speaking about his experience with somatics, his training, his understanding of the nervous system and how the nervous system is influencing our inner world. So, is there a correlation between our thoughts and our emotions? If so, how can we co-regulate ourselves? Considering all the scientific evidence and knowledge that we have and possess right now as humanity about those biomechanical processes in the body when being penetrated and stimulated by the outer world. So how can we regulate ourselves? How can we understand what's going on and use it for our personal evolution and growth? Then building the bridge to spirituality. Why, I wanted to know from Felix, does he feel the need to combine spirituality with science and somatics? Couldn't it be just somatics? Couldn't it be just the science? Why do we need this other realm? I wanted to know. We'll explore the world of men's work. What does he get from working with me? What does he get from working with men? What does he take away from that? And what has that work done for him as a man? We are also exploring then the world of the mysticism. how do we cultivate a relationship to God? How does he cultivate a relationship with God? What does that even mean? So all of those beautiful things. It's a rich episode. It's a beautiful just co-creation, a beautiful conversation between two men who are on a very similar wavelength. And I felt that from the get-go with him. And I don't know, it's just a testament of like when you are putting yourself out there as unfiltered and raw and transparent as possible, you will attract certain people and repel others. And I can see that on this channel, you know, when I'm looking back where I was, to meet myself with compassion and empathy through all of the 1.5, 2 years of podcasting, you know, when I'm looking back at some episodes, that was my authentic self back then. And that's fine. And that's fine. And I can meet that with compassion. With all the, you know, improvements, quote unquote, the evolution that I made compared to then to where I'm now, how I'm hosting these, how I'm talking, you know, all of that it's a constant evolution, but it's at the end of the day all an offering. It's all an offering. You can take it or you can leave it, you know. So if you like it, please do me a favor, 10-15 seconds of your time, follow the podcast, like the podcast, and rate the podcast. Rate the podcast on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube, you know. Please, it makes a tremendous difference for us creators, because that's the digital currency, right? You know, I'm sending out the energy, and you can give me a little bit back of the energy by those tiny clicks if you're resonating. Thank you so much in advance. This beautiful conversation between myself and Felix Wittmann. Invite you to tune in to the body where we are right now. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Fully present right now with everything that comes along with. Beautiful creation on this day. Please facilitate a loving connection between Felix and I. Guide our tongues so we can speak what needs to be said, so we can hear what needs to be heard, so we can share what needs to be shared. May we come from a place of openness, love, authenticity, integrity, respect. We see, we realize, we feel that there's so much more to this experience that we can pick up with our senses. All of those who came before us, the ancestors, all of those who will come after us, are present with us right now. We honor that. We're grateful for that, for all the nectar, the sweetness of life, but also the burden of what it means to be human in this day and age. May we move with grace, tenderness, but also grit, power, direction. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you. And with that, moving into this conversation.
Beautiful.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me here, for inviting me into your sacred space here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Very welcome. It's been a pleasure hosting you. It's been a pleasure experiencing both of our energies meeting in the flesh,
Yeah.
seeing what that does. And I'm more than ever excited of what the human experience has to still offer, especially when it comes to connections like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very beautiful reminder, I guess, what can emerge when one becomes more and more aligned and in tune with the frequency that is sort of innate within oneself. And the closer you align that, I feel like the more the universe, cosmos, God can provide us with people, places, and circumstances that match this frequency.
Exactly.
And then we can co-create something like this,
Mm-hmm.
which then feels like aligned.
Mm-hmm.
No, barely resistance, you know? It's always the indication for me when there's like a little resistance, much more into flow, then I'm like, okay, I guess we're moving into a right direction here. So this experience has done that for me. So I want to thank you for that, and maybe have that be a start of the conversation. How did you experience it now? How are you feeling? And how was the experience of the last 24, 36 hours for you?
Such a beautiful experience to give the listeners and viewers a bit more background. So Maxi and I have been connecting for 3 months since the beginning of 2024 now. And this is like the first time that we met in the physical, in the flesh, so to speak. And yeah, that has been a unique experience, just to connect first and foremost via online space, and then getting to meet someone in the physical. It has a different texture, more depth to it. And then just you allowing me into your space, welcoming me to, like I said, this sacred space. I honor that if people invite me into their very own, just vulnerability, home, something special. And there's so much unfolding and so much richness in a connection like this, where we both feel that it's, like you said, very in alignment, very much resonating with like the core frequency of our soul. And those connections are very special if those lights pop up and you sort of follow the road. And there's beautiful co-creations emerging out of that. And this is what I'm feeling right now, doing this podcast with you and just having this friendship dynamic, cultivating it, seeing it evolve, and it's such a nutrient, nourishing experience to meet people like you and then form a deeper bond.
So I guess, were there expectations you were bringing with you when coming here, and how did they sort of shift into how you feel right now?
Good question. I have to think about that for a second. I would say, of course, there's like tiny expectations here and there, but not big expectations that I had. I was pretty much very like open to just, dive into this experience with you, like meeting you and seeing, like, I'm a person that is very like, I trust in my intuition. I like to go with the flow. I mean, I like structure as well, but I don't have oftentimes many expectations that limit me in the sense of an experience that feels very aligned. I'm just like diving in and seeing where things take me, you know. And of course, we talked about this, like what do we want to do when we meet up? You know, we have 3 days. Arrived Friday afternoon, noontime, and then stayed until today, Sunday. So, yeah, I guess there were little expectations and a bit of nervousness and like how are we going to get along? I mean, sort of that human aspect, but then there's also like that inner part of me that's just like going for it and there's no resistance going on.
So little expectations, and then being open. I received you as an open spirit, open-hearted guy. So I guess what we've also shared and talked about previously, you know, when it comes to the archetypes, you know, with that openness comes a certain responsibility, and the shadow side, you know, there's light and there's shadow to being open, being vulnerable. So I feel like this is something we really share, you know, being very open, but then having to maybe learn the discernment piece, right? The boundary piece, the warrior piece. So much what we've been discussing recently. Where would you say are you with that right now? Discernment, setting boundaries. Yeah.
Beautiful question again. Such an important topic, discernment, especially if we are diving into, or if like myself and you, if you're coming from a more like spiritual community, emerging out of that, growing out of it. Discernment is so important. And first and foremost, I would say, like, in context to discernment, it has a lot to do with exploration, experience, just playing around with it. It's not something that you can read about, like this is how you discern and then you know how it functions, right? You have to go through certain experiences, you know, that shape you in a way. And discernment and like sharpening your gut feeling, your intuition around things that you perceive is so important, especially if you're like us. We are heart-centered men that are very open. There's also like the people pleaser aspect that comes in, you know, the fawn response, how we call it in somatics, huge part in that, which is, you know, it comes from childhood wounding, where you tend to you just want to belong, and therefore you override your own needs. And in terms of discernment, you just have to learn like which experiences are really for you, and which experiences are more like you stay away from, right? And that comes with experience. You just have to be open, and that's something I'm very big on. It's just like every single experience, everything that from emotions to thoughts to like experiences like this, they all flow together into my evolution, if you will. You know, like everything plays a part, and it's like I'm always gathering information and piecing together a bigger puzzle, so to speak. And it's ever unfolding, like you said yesterday. It's like in a computer game, if the reality is just rendering itself. You know, you're walking the path and of alignment and truth, and then the reality in front of you is sort of rendering itself and coming into vision more and more as you walk it. And the same goes for discernment. You just have to like practice it daily.
So what piece of the boundary setting discernment situation is most alive within you? In which area of your life does that really play a part right now? Where do you feel like this is needed the most?
So recently, the most recent experience throughout the last 2 years has been on, like, in context to my work. I've been working in a chiropractic practice, and obviously you have certain things that come up. People get sick, and then you sort of have to jump in and help out. And your boss is asking you like, "Hey, Felix, can you help us here?" And that has been a huge lesson for me to really set firm boundaries, because part of me is just like, I want to appease, I want to like be a good employee, but I have to sort of take care of myself first, because I cannot serve from an empty cup. And I was already riding with my studies and working and all of the other stuff that I'm doing, and yoga and like movement and taking care of my body. It's sort of riding that wave where you sometimes lean a bit too much out of the window, so to speak, and then you fall down, and other times you don't lean out of the window at all, and you have to find sort of the middle path in terms of setting those boundaries. In the beginning, it's often helpful to, when you first come into contact with your anger, um, that's where the power of boundaries comes from. You know, you have to tap into your anger, like, no, I don't want that. You can't set boundaries from a space of like, just love you, and you just have to have that firm rootedness, and then move from that more masculine, just like setting that boundary and being like, no, I just can't jump in here in that setting. And yeah, that's one example where boundaries have been very, setting boundaries has been something palpable for me, but then also very alive right now as we speak. Boundaries in context to my relationship to my family, to my parents. Just I'm still living at home currently, and big piece of the journey that is unfolding right now for me is to set boundaries and to walk my own path in love and respect for my parents. But yeah, just setting boundaries and taking that next step.
Yeah, big piece for you. I feel like
Big piece for me.
Yeah.
Next step in my journey.
So, are there already steps you can name that you are going to take in order to facilitate that change?
Well, first and foremost comes to mind one of my favorite principles from Somatics by Dr. Peter Levine, the principle of titration. Step by step, micro shifts. That's something that I'm very big on. I love the concept of the window of tolerance by Dr. Daniel Siegel as well. Super interesting. And for me, it's all about taking those steps that are in alignment, that are sort of little steps towards towards your vision, towards your goal, towards your path that is calling you forth. And then experimenting, like taking a bigger step, then taking a smaller step. That's sort of super important for me. Just not taking too big of a step. Sometimes, if that's what I need to do, it's taking that big step. But for me, it's just trusting in those little steps right now. It's like I have a direction that I'm going towards. It's not crystal clear right now, but it's a feeling that I'm moving towards.
What's the feeling? Can you describe the feeling?
Good question. The feeling is just alignment. It's like I know, like, okay, my path is leading in this direction, in this feeling. Like I call it, it's like me and God, where I talk to God, and it's like I know I have to trust without knowing intellectually what my next step is. Sometimes sometimes it's crystal clear, and like you have to figure things out, you have to plan things out, you have to organize things. And right now, in the very phase that I'm in, it's just taking step by step into this direction, into this feeling of just, okay, there's a lot of uncertainty, and I have to just trust that things are unfolding as I walk the path. And then we go with like the analogy of the computer game, which is rendering itself as you walk the path, where the environment is rendering itself.
So in this incarnation, in this time around, for you, this is tied to the work with somatics. It's tied to the work within, and that's like those are my words now. Like you take them wherever you want to take them. But how would you describe that direction? So somatics is a part that is influencing your work, that you've studied in, that you are currently studying in. There is the alternative healing practitioner qualification degree,
Heilpraktiker.
however you want to translate that. There's mysticism, I guess, involved, and spirituality. So yeah, can you just take us a little bit more into your world there? What are the pieces that are part of your direction, part of your path? Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a huge fan of bridging worlds, so to speak. Like, I love, on one hand, I love mysticism, spirituality, and tapping into that which you can't describe, that which you can't put into words, the realms beyond words. Huge fan of that. Poetry, like these kinds of worlds, mystic worlds. But at the same time, throughout my journey, I also found the importance of just being rooted, being grounded, absolutely grounded, having your 2 feet on the earth, 2 feet on the earth. And there comes for me as a huge important part somatics. Somatics is a pretty new emerging scientific branch, let's call it that, which is sort of coaching and therapy approaches all about the body, like body-based coaching and therapy approaches. And for me, like, the body plays such a huge part in our evolution as humans. There's like the mystical and the higher dimensional aspect, but then where it's really happening is when you merge that holy, sacred, higher frequency, whatever, with the body, with that which we are inhabiting every day. And to me, what's really exciting is just seeing the parallels between spirituality, mysticism, what people are talking there, and then seeing, like, diving into the somatics part, into like especially the science about the nervous system, trauma, parts work also, and how that describes exactly what I'm seeing in mysticism and spirituality, just in a different wording, so to speak, in a different terminology. And they are both, of course, they have different textures, different nuances, but in essence, they're describing the very same thing. And bridging these two together is so beautiful to me. And
so what's the commonality? What's the same thing? What's the core that they both are describing?
Presence. It's all about presence. It's all about awareness. Yeah, when you dive into the core practices like yoga, qigong, and then you dive into sort of somatic parts work, or I'm currently training it's a German training called Neuro-Systemic Integration by Verena König. And like the core piece is always the awareness, like dropping back into an inner part that has awareness of all the other parts. And in yoga, qigong, it's also all about like cultivating awareness, cultivating presence. And this is what's fascinating so fascinating to me. It's just like cultivating presence, awareness, and how we can bring that and move that through our body, because I think which people call the soul, like spirit. Um, it's that presence that moves through our body when you can, like now, right now, tap into your feet. Just feel your feet on the ground. And that's a big part of the healing, like reconnecting with our body, being present. Yeah. And the more present, the more embodied you are, the more connected you are. And the more connected you are, the more close you are to the essence of who you truly are. Beyond words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's an experience rather than a theory or like a concept that we can describe. It's a felt experience.
There's also the term felt sense from somatics. Super interesting. And yeah, it's an experience. And also, and I find that really helpful, it's a term called psychoeducation. It's just the having the knowledge and information about how our nervous system, how our body, our physiology just functions. And that is also super healing, super helpful, super helpful in terms of integration. Yeah, just knowing about these things, like knowing what trauma is, how it works, how your nervous system works, why you act in certain ways in certain situations. And so it is an experience first and foremost at the core, but then it also is, it's an important part to know about these things intellectually, to have those concepts. And there we go again, bottom up, top down. That's how we call it in more scientific terms. Or you could also say like body, soul merging, mind, body merging. And I just love that. Masculine, feminine principles. This is where I'm becoming like coming alive. Just merging these polarities together. Masculine, feminine dynamics. The formless and the form. I just love that.
Yeah, bridging the worlds as you
Bridging the
described.
worlds.
Yeah. Tell me about the nervous system. Tell me about what it is that we need to know, the basics of the nervous system that we need to understand in order to understand, I guess, its place within the work of somatics, and the work that you're doing, essentially. Yeah. What can you tell us about the nervous system when it comes to that?
Okay, a little dive into the polyvagal theory by Dr. Stephen Porges. I love the polyvagal theory. Such an integral, important piece just to my evolution and to many people's evolution. Everybody who works with people, I think it's helpful to know about this. So let me dive into sort of the core states, the very foundational states of the nervous system, just to understand how our nervous system works. I mean, I could talk about this for like 2 or 3 hours, but let's just put it into a small frame for now. What is a nervous system state? We are always in a certain state. So right now, when we are talking, we are sort of in a state that is called ventral vagal, which is connection. Just the term would be connection. We are socializing, we are regulated. Yeah, perhaps we are a bit nervous. I myself feel a bit nervous, a bit activated, but I'm within the window of tolerance. So this is the one state, regulation, connection. Then you have another state, which is the sympathetic nervous system state, which is when you are activated, when you become anxious, when there's fear arising. At one point, you drop into like your sympathetic nervous system gets activated, and then you either want to flee away, or fight. So these are the two options, or co-regulate. So you have 3 options to get back to connection, regulation. You either fight, you flee, or in the worst case, you have to like freeze and just pretend you are dead, basically. And that brings us to the third state of the nervous system, which is the dorsal vagal state, which is sort of just close to death. Like all of your basic bodily functions. Imagine a flame that just gets dimmer and dimmer, and then it's almost to the point that the flame goes out. That's dorsal vagal. The activation that your nervous system is experiencing is too much, and your system tries to protect you, and the flame goes out, and it's like, okay, we are just like dissociating, we're tuning out. Imagine the feeling of like outer space, drifting into outer space, where you're like, I'm out. And to dive into this whole topic a bit deeper, I have to say the nervous system is like a threat detector. Super interesting. Your nervous system is constantly scanning your environment. It's like danger, safety, danger, safety, danger, safety. And when it detects danger, then it moves in either of these states, either sympathetic activation to get you ready to mobilize your energy, that you're ready to fight or to flee, or if it's too much, boom, shut down. And then there's also a couple of mixed states. So those are the basic states, the foundational states, and then you have mixed states where fawn response falls under, for example, which is you are connected, you are in a ventral vagal state, but then you're also activated, sympathetic state. So you experience a bit of anxiety here. And then fawn response is basically like you trying to adapt, trying to belong, trying to make things, feel good for other people, but overriding your own needs, basically. So that's one mixed state. And then we also have other mixed states. I mean, that is going a bit deep, but play, for example, would also be a mixed state where you are activated and you're connected, but it's in a regulated state. And then perhaps a good example would be children playing. When you imagine like children are playing, and then at first there's nothing much going on, and then they're getting into the flow, and they're like boom, 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 and they're playing, and then the noise gets louder and louder and louder, and at some point you can almost feel it in the room. It's like, okay, something's about to happen, and then the activation level of their nervous system is just too high, and then they boom, drop into dysregulation, and then fights happening.
Is there a place in the body where the nervous system is located, like centrally located, where it can be pinned down?
Well, there's also the vagus nerve, which is like the biggest nerve that runs through almost your entire body. But I would say the nervous system is, of course, your central nervous system, your brain, but then your nervous system runs through your entire body. It's like the connecting piece of your body.
Right.
And this is where we are getting back into like the mysticism also. It's like science and mysticism. What is the nervous system? It's like a communication tool in your body. It transmits electricity, it transmits impulses, information, basically. So you have information traveling up, down, from the body to the brain, from the brain to the body. So yeah, knowing your nervous system is knowing how your information is being transported in your body.
Like the infrastructure of the human experience in some sense.
Yeah. And what's so important to me, why the nervous system is so important, is because your nervous system dictates your thoughts, like your emotional and your thought experience. Like all of your thoughts are depending on the state that your nervous system is in. Like when you're in a fight or flight state, your nervous system is like the voice that you're hearing in your mind is almost like, I have to do this. Let's get this done. Okay, we can do something about it. It's like very pushy, very like, let's go. We have to. Whereas if you're in dorsal, in shutdown mode, your voice would sound like, doesn't matter. Doesn't make any sense anyway. It's pointless. I don't know why I'm here. It's like apathy, depression lives there.
Okay, that's very interesting now, because yesterday we were having a deep conversation around a similar topic with another friend, right? Who brought in a different kind of perspective to this. And she basically came from a place of like, hey, you know, the thoughts in therapy, we can work with like the thought that then dictates the emotion that follows in the body. So if we want to regulate the body, we start with regulating the thoughts and redirecting the course of the thoughts, right? Reprogramming the thoughts. And what I'm hearing you say is, yeah, but the nervous system is basically even one step prior, because the thoughts are based on the state of your nervous system. So I guess to put that in a question, it's more like this. So I'm understanding this as a very subtle, like it is palpable, but then it's also not really palpable or tangible. Like the nervous system, it's not like this place in the body you can push a button, or you can push it, or you can massage it, and then it's like, then it's better. So I guess my question is like, okay, so how do we work with the nervous system to a point of like regulating it into a state of regulation, right? Yeah.
Beautiful question again. Thank you, Maxi. So, regulating the nervous system, going practical here. I like that. So there's obviously 1,000 somatic practices that you can do. It's also very trendy currently. To me, a regulated nervous system is more like something that is, of course, we need practices right now in our modern society. But if you think back, that's my own theory. Like, I mean, if you think back, people living in nature, your nervous system is constantly in a regulated state because you're having nature around you. Your gaze is wide. You're looking into the distance. It's one thing to regulate your nervous system. You're having the natural sounds like birds regulating your nervous system, water, like hearing the sound of water. It's all about tuning back into the body, tuning back into the senses, being in a state of awareness. Like think of a Doberman, like a dog that is just there. It's super present. It's like listening, looking, super aware, but not stressed. Just aware, attentive. And that's sort of the state where you are present, aware, attentive, but not stressed. And in our society right now, we are always stressed. There's always like stress on our system. We have to move there. We have to do this. We have to do this. We are always focused, hyper focused on one point, and we've lost sort of the just relaxing focus where we are present with our focus being wide. So much to that. So moving into a more practical side now. So there's many like practices that you can do. For example, one of my favorite things is just orienting yourself in the room, which goes back to what I just said. When I have to back up a little. In order to regulate our nervous system, we have to understand that we can't talk to our nervous system through language. Like you can't say, okay, please regulate, please feel safe. And we have to tell our nervous system through showing it that it's safe. So orientation in the room is telling our nervous system, like you're orienting, you're looking, okay, the environment is safe. This is sending a signal to our brain that everything is fine. And then our nervous system can relax. So practices like this, or just giving yourself a hug, tapping, taking a deep breath, like belly breathing, coherent breathing like we did before. Things like this. Every time you get back into your senses, like smelling a flower, smelling essential oils. There's so much. To me, it's a lot about embodiment, just getting back into your body. That's very regulating. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then again, it depends so much on the person also, because a tree can be very regulating to me because I grew up in nature and I love trees. To someone who has perhaps a negative association with trees, depending on the history, on the past, they look at a tree and it triggers them, it activates something within them, and then boom, they are all already distressed by looking at a tree. So it's a very subjective thing also, how you regulate your nervous system.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that being said, like that's very, yeah, really sounds and is, speaking from personal experience, you've been introducing me to some of those practices. You've been enriching the men's group we're part of with these kind of orientational practices.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've had people on the podcast who were speaking about that also extensively. So it's like a very, yeah, it's a very tangible thing. I can really relate to it. Like it makes sense on multiple levels. Like I can understand it, and then I can act upon it, and I can feel the results within my felt experience. Now, I guess we've talked about it already, but still, like, there's something that I feel like still is there. Like, so where does in your work with people, like, so you're gonna work with someone, and then it is about the co-regulation of the nervous system, and you're using somatic practices to do that. At which point do you introduce the mystical spiritual side, and what does that add to this somatic piece?
I love your questions,
More,
Maxi.
maybe a little bit more controversially put, like, why do we need even something on top of that? Like, wouldn't it be enough to just have someone, I don't know, sit there and like teach them about the regulation of the nervous system? You know, this is how you do it. You know, nothing needs to be said about God. Nothing needs to be said about spirituality. Nothing has to be said about mysticism. It's just about, like, right, sit down, orientate yourself in the room, do the tapping, do this, do that. You're good to go. So I'm like, you know, why do we need this?
I need to let this sink in. It's just such a beautiful point you're making here. Because in essence, the nervous system regulation and the somatics and the scientific part would be totally enough. Like you could cut it there, and you can really go into like the depth of healing, of the healing experience. To me, bringing in mysticism, it brings a different texture, a different quality, something that in some people is just inherent in their soul. It's like a flavor. It's like your favorite ice cream or something. Like reading a poem, it adds a certain dimension of depth that you're not able to enter through just the scientific part of somatics, for example. I mean, you can go quite deep, but to me, there's something that goes just a bit deeper, that with the mysticism and also like bringing in a bit of the polarity teachings, and just there's something that can't be put into words. And if it's not for everybody, you know, we are all wired differently, but some people, they just carry this inner mystic, let's put it that way. And their soul is just yearning for something that can't be put into words. Like one of my favorite quotes is just, in this world but not of it, you know. And that's just my experience. It's like, yes, I'm in this world, but there's also a part of me that cannot be satiated by this worldly experience. It's like the holy ache, so to speak. It's like I need my connection. I need to cultivate my relationship to God in order to get that piece of my heart back. Like, if I'm just on the somatic level and just the scientific healing your nervous system, that's wonderful, but something would be missing. And this is where my work comes in. It's not for everybody. That's clear. It's for those who are yearning and aching for something that this world doesn't have to offer. And this is what we are, diving in, tuning in. It's like, yeah, why do you read poetry? Yeah? Why do we do art?
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it necessary to do art? Well, some say, intellectually based people would say, well, I don't need art. But there's some people, they feel something. I feel it right now. Yeah. Looking at you, tuning into my own heart. It's like, there's more. And having that container, that safe structure, having those somatics as principles that I follow in my work, lays out a beautiful, safe container. But then there's also the sacred component, which you can have with the somatic part as well. But the sacredness is, to me, that is so important. Like adding that to my work, like almost having this, just safe container, but also having this ceremonial container and bringing those two together.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, like therapy can be a beautiful thing, but it's so dry. It's like that's something that in my soul is just so alive. Like, yeah, I could go down the road of just pretending to be a therapist, but to me that it's so dry. Like, okay, yeah, I am Felix Wittmann, a somatic therapist. Okay, cool. But to me, there's the way that I want to present myself, the way I want to express myself at the deepest level is just there's the poet in me, the mystic in me that just yearns for depth. And this is why I'm, here bridging those two worlds.
Yeah, it's been beautiful to witness you in that as well. I guess like from the get-go, from the, you've been working on this prior to our connection.
Right.
Yet I feel like very naturally through also the container of the men's work we've been doing, there was more and more a room and a space was emerging, was built that allowed you to very organically, very naturally step into this version of yourself and the work that you're offering and share that medicine with the men in the group. Very subconsciously, like that's how I found it from like looking at it from the outside. It was just how you convey, how you carry yourself, how you speak about things, how you just share, that adds a layer of what you've just described so articulately, that palpable, very technical, scientific side, but then also enriching it with the very mystical, poetic element, and that basically then makes you, and that makes me, I don't know, let's use the analogy of music, that makes me tune into your channel and listen to your music, or like lets me look at your painting, your creation, because that's the unique mix, the blend of disciplines that you bring into the world. And I feel like it would be a disservice to humanity and to the world, for that matter, to not follow that, not to bring this forward. And I've been, we've been in contact about that, it's in a very pivotal time, I feel like, in both of our lives. And I found it actually very beautiful to now witness it with a little bit, it's just been a couple of weeks, months, to see where we both took that. You seem to be, locked into a direction that you want to go to, and this intention of like bridging those two worlds and stepping away from that purely scientific situation and kind of like how you offer it, like your work. And you're like, nah, no, I want to do it more in like internationally English, I want to use language in that way. I want to incorporate, my old, everything I've experienced in the past with mysticism and spirituality. I want to make that a conscious effort, that reflects in the podcast you're doing, in the fonts you're using, the colors, everything.
Thank you.
Everything, yeah. And same goes for me. Yeah, same goes for me. And I feel like it's I had this discussion with a friend the other day. What kind of like, what's the underlying intention and motivation that makes us decide for either A or B, you know? Is it, and for me, it's like love or fear, right? And I feel like you've decided for love, you know? Although I'm assuming there's a shit ton of fear as well. Potentially, I don't know.
True that.
Yeah, I don't know. Would that be an accurate reflection of
Absolutely.
where you're at?
Well said, Maxi.
Right.
It's not easy to go that path. You know, it's easy. It would be much easier to just go down the road of being like a Heilpraktiker, which in German, in English, would be like a naturopathic doctor, practitioner, holistic practitioner. Just settling down, opening my own practice, and being like a therapist. Cool, yeah. But going down a path that is not laid out yet, that is not sculpted, that I have to sort of render out myself by walking it, takes a lot of trust, a lot of work, a lot of you have to know your own nervous system, you have to know how your body works, how to take care of yourself, because when you're walking down, I mean, you know that when you're walking down that path, that is not that you have to forge your own path, your own unique energetic imprint that you put out into the world. There's all kinds of fears coming up that you're being confronted with, and then this is why I'm such a fan of the somatics as well, because then you need to apply those tools. Then you need to know your nervous system, which state you're in. Overwhelm kicks in. Okay, how do I regulate myself again? But then again, also like the mystic part. It's like, where am I going? Like, how can I cultivate a deeper relationship with God, with like the mystery of life? Like, yeah, just tuning, feeling into this depth.
Yeah, and I find that very inspiring also as a reflection. Like I told you that numerous times. Like I feel like it's enriching my experience in this world to be in the presence of you, and then also to receive your. And this is like, you know, this is happening without me looking at it. Just like, what is he doing? You know, show me. And but like I feel like, you know, it's like it's just how you are, and I get to witness it. I get to observe that, and just to see you how you are speaking about those topics and how you integrate the great mystery into your life. I feel like this is, yeah, at least for me, it's very inspiring. And it's also, I feel like a plant that I haven't watered inside of me for quite a while. It has been very present, and then I sort of like distanced myself a little bit from it, and now I'm sort of like slowly moving back into it, and I find great, yeah, it's interesting as I'm just reflecting on it myself. Like I find it very interesting to see that, you know, it's needed. It's both needed.
Yeah.
Like I needed to sort of, you know, go a little bit into a different direction, get a little bit more practical, which the whole men's work kind of situation is offering me. But then also, like you say, bring in like a different energy, because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here if, you know, if I wasn't resonating with your with this urge and this ache that you described earlier on, you know,
because
I have that
holy ache.
Yeah, I have that as well.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like our senses are so limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like 1%, maybe even 0.1% of what is actually happening.
Right.
Is to be picked up on with our senses, you know. So yeah, I want to speak to you about working with men. I want to speak to you about your experience with that. Tell me about your experience with working with men and how that affected you.
Working with men, yeah, I've been feeling that call for quite a while now, but there wasn't any opening, any container, any invitations until you came along, and then you invited me to your very first men's circle that you facilitated. And yeah, first and foremost, there's just something so unique about men connecting with men. Just, it's unique when women come together, woman and woman. It's unique when men and women come together and hold space for each other. But men coming together is such a unique experience, because then it's just raw masculine essence, and just like the way you facilitate these containers is so beautiful. It's so pure. It's just distilled down to what's necessary. It's men coming together, men sharing, men witnessing each other. That's it. And that's so healing. So healing to just something that many men are dealing with, is just loneliness. I've heard this one quote recently, which is, among a group of women, you're more likely to find connection. Among a group of men, you're more likely to find truth. And women are just wired to connect more. That's why they take care of the children in the first place. And men are more wired to, go out, seek truth. And by seeking truth, I'm not speaking of like the full truth and transparency. I'm just, it's like a frequency. And men, they don't care so much about connection, so they just stay in their own lane. But we also need to connect, to feel safe, and then connect with each other. And that has a very healing component. Just being in the space, sharing your challenges, what's aching inside of yourself, and being witnessed by, in our group, for example, 5 to 7 men, makes you feel seen, makes you feel heard, makes you feel not so alone. And that in itself, priceless. Just that frequency, just sitting there, sharing, your heart is racing, and you're like, oof, let's go into that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you feel like is something that this work has introduced into your life that hasn't been there before? What has it added into your life?
Brotherhood, first and foremost. Just being connected in the first place. I mean, it's an online space, but just knowing that there's like a repetitive meeting, every month we meet, that's a big resource. Just to know that it's happening. There's a space where we come together, where we grow together. But then also like opportunities like this, us meeting in the physical, doing things together, co-creating, nourishing each other with our unique gifts, our presence. But then also a quality that you don't, it's a different texture that men provide for each other when they connect and they go deep and they meet each other with truth, see each other, that you don't have when you meet with a woman. With a woman, it's more like, let's say I book a session with a woman that is sort of a healer, and you have a very unique energy going on here. Something, it's more nourishing, it's more like you're held, it's that feminine energy that's just, okay, wow. The masculine is more like whoosh, truth piercing through you. And it's something that is missing big time in our society. Just being like living, how I like to call it, and yourself as well, like the walking the path of truth and what that means. It's becoming more clear, it's just, you can say, oh yeah, I'm walking down the path of truth and I'm devoted to truth, but it's one thing to talk about it, and it's another thing to walk it and move through everything that stands in the way, quote unquote, of truth, or the gunk, all of the hurt. And yeah, that is one thing that men's work has just opened me up to be in that presence, to be penetrated in quote unquote by other men's gaze. And it's like burning away all that's not needed, all the bullshit, all that walking on eggshells. It's like, what's underneath it, man, Felix?
Yeah, it's a confrontation as well.
Yeah, in a healthy way. Confrontation in a healthy way.
Exactly.
Not in a toxic way. Very, very necessary. We don't have that. Most men are just too feminine, especially in the spiritual New Age communities. It's all about love, light, connectedness. So, I'm so connected. But in essence, the same underlying wounds are still present with like a different makeup.
Yeah.
And this is what I love about the men's work, that the way you are facilitating it, the way Sacred Sons, where you learned from people are facilitating this work. It's so a lot of the esoteric spiritual terminology just drops away, and it's more like, okay, truth. Yeah, that's what we are focusing on.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear this from you as well, because like it's a new territory, you know, for us men.
Yeah,
like so much bigger than myself. Like it's for all of us, for the community of men. This is a new age. We're walking down a new path of masculinity, integrated masculinity, initiated masculinity. And initiations have been, I guess, around for millennia, but now bringing that together with everything that we've learned, but also what we are facing today, you know, the challenges.
Yeah.
And just being initiated into manhood in the traditional sense, I feel like it's not even enough. We need to be initiated into the time that we're living in as well, with all the frequencies that are alive, which are just different. I would argue maybe even multifaceted and even more multidimensional than they have been before.
Absolutely.
So like it's just added, like textures were added. And now I feel like it's our responsibility as men to face that.
Yeah.
To face that and to integrate that. And initiation is an essential part of that primal archaic initiation. But then like merge it with the world we're living in, and also benefit from everything that we have, you know, as mankind done and experienced. Also with the subtler realms, I feel like there's great wisdom and great value to be found and extracted in the subtler realms, in the feminine realms. You know, there's much to be learned.
Yeah.
I feel like it's beautiful. It's a gift. It's not either or, you know, it's and. Yeah. But this work is, I feel that as well. It's a necessity. It's a necessity, and it's something. Yeah, it's nice to hear you speak about it in that way, because you find very beautiful, articulate words. I feel like that very accurately describe what it is that sort of we are doing and what it is about, like the intention behind. It's like truth, you know. And at the same time, I find myself, and I say that often in the groups, you know, like after a session, after something happened, it's just like, how do you even want to describe that to people?
Yeah.
How do you even want to put that into words? It's just this feeling of like, yeah, and this is a word that gets thrown around a lot, you know. It's like this remembrance. It's like this, your whole body, sort of like your whole lineage remembers how it feels to be an integrated man. You know, that this is what I feel.
Yeah.
And I'm like remembering that. It's not something that is new. You know, it's just not like this fucking light beam coming down, just like, oh yeah, now I see. It's more like this like you say, burning away from what it's not. And then I'm seeing it. Yeah. So, what did? Who was that? Leonardo da Vinci? Who was it? With the sculpturing,
Mm,
like I'm just
I know.
chipping away
Yeah,
at
yeah,
what
yeah,
it's not. That's really what we're doing. I feel like
yeah. Chiseling away at the illusion.
exactly burning away the ashes of karma. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's it.
that's the work.
Yeah. So yeah, it was very nice, beautiful. Thank you for sharing your experience with that. How would you describe your relationship with God today?
You're diving in, Maxi. So I listened to the to a video that a friend of mine sent to me from Richard Rudd on Hafiz, uh, Islamic Sufi mystic, and Hafiz is talking about God, like God is his friend. Like the word friend is how he describes his relationship. Just God is a friend. And that really deeply resonated within me. Like God is not some kind of superior figure, especially not like a bearded white man, as in religion. God to me is just a friend, of a relationship that I'm cultivating every single moment in my life right now. Every single experience, everything that I take in is God moving through me. And we had that conversation a few weeks ago. So, God, spirituality to me is my relationship as an individual to the whole, like to everything, to the all, to the cosmos. It's like, where is my part right now? What do I need to do? What do I need to be right now in this moment? Every moment. That's the relationship. That's how I would describe my relationship to God. I mean, I can go down in more details, but in a very few sentences here, my relationship to God is just what is required of me as Felix, as this soul incarnated in Felix. What is required of me right now? This is how can I move in alignment? To me, alignment is everything. And alignment to me is just how can I be in right relationship to God? And that doesn't mean there's no room for failure, for mistakes, for doing things wrong. It's just, are you moving consciously or are you moving unconsciously based off survival mechanisms? Because one more thing in that context, when you're moving consciously, when you're making a conscious choice, you can take in the experience and then adjust accordingly. And then there's growth happening. When you're moving unconsciously, it's like you're throwing yourself somewhere and then there's no room for reflection. And then there's no life being cultivated.
Mm-hmm.
And cultivating life, that's what it's about for me. Like how can we speak on life? How can we act on life instead of just acting on concepts, on just emptiness, on yeah.
How do you cultivate a relationship with God?
Mm-hmm. Back to what I said before, awareness is everything. Like the foundation and principle in all the great traditions and all the ancient cultures, yoga, qigong, somatics. It's all about how can you become aware of yourself? How can you drop in your body, develop a relationship with your body? That's super important to me. Like my body is where my relationship with God lives at. How safe do I feel in my body? How good do I feel in my body? And this is where life is happening in my body, in every single cell of my body. And then also a huge part is just having, and this is why I like the term God and more than universe. And I want to say, like, everyone's free to choose. If universe is more resonating, that's totally fine. If it's different terminology, it's just describing the same thing. But for me personally, God is just such a beautiful term, because it's personal, and I can have like a one-on-one conversation with him. And yes, it's not a him per se, but I like to call him a him, like he, God, Father, Mother, God. But still, it's that one-on-one conversation. And there's a huge part as well that I just want to bring up here, is also, for example, to make this more tangible, you can also be angry at God. It's your sparring partner. It's your partner that can take everything that humans can't. In a relationship, you can't just throw all of your anger, all of your rage onto your partner. It's just, that's not okay. On God, you can. And that's something that I had to learn in my relationship. It's like, you can be angry. You can be like, I'm just literally pissed. Like, why is this happening right now to me? Why do I have to experience this? Why do I have to hit rock fucking bottom? And then just bring it on. Just talk it out. And this is my practice, just developing this deeper relationship. In the beginning, it's just you're talking a bit here and there, and then you sort of understand your unique relationship. It's unique to everybody. Just because I'm relating in the way that I do with God doesn't mean that someone else has to relate in that way. It's a unique relationship that you're developing over time. It takes experience, it takes exploration, playfulness, curiosity, openness, all of these things.
So you'll be speaking? You'll be praying? Is that something you...
Yeah, prayer as well.
Right?
Yeah, prayer as well. That's something, I want to dive into this.
Mm-hmm.
So prayer, I used to meditate a lot, and prayer wasn't something that I was doing or open to, especially in German, like Gebet, or Gebet. I don't, that's not something that I want to do. But in the recent years, prayer has sort of grown something that I love. And to me, it went from a very like hitting rock bottom, where I was just praying to sort of survive, like, please, dear God, get me through this, protect me, keep my family safe. And that's very beautiful. Just to, when you're so like ripped open, just naked, one-on-one with God, and you're like, please, this is where the light of God just shines through you when you're ripped open. And then sort of that developed. It became, the relationship shifted a bit more to me bringing my purpose into this world. And in that way, I sort of leaned more towards opening myself to God. And what I love is just praying in a way of like, okay, God, purify my mind, clarify my perception, those kinds of things. Or saying, God, ready me for my destiny. It's moving from, God, please give me this, please give me X, Y, Z, to just strip me open, clear me, purify me, purge me of what's in the way, and just show me truth. Or something else I love is just saying, God, shape me into the man that embodies your will. Just let that sit for a moment, land. It's totally different quality, different texture of prayer. And it's like, we all have these moments where we meet, for example, personal share here, people, and there might be like a relationship emerging, and all of a sudden your mind is just projecting, or obviously, understandably, and you're like, oh, I would love for this relationship to work out. And then in the traditional manifestation space, you would do X, Y, Z to manifest that relationship into physical form. And for me, it has shifted to more yes, accepting my human self on one side of like, okay, there's these projections, there's these, oh, I would love this to work out, and that tenderness. But then there's also like the higher aspect of myself that is like, okay, God, show me truth. No delusions, please. Don't want to waste my time. And it's hurtful. It hurts when you are shown the truth. Because there's a lot of tendencies that we like to dive in of illusion, delusion, just fantasy. Like, that would be a romantic, great relationship, and then going down at, it's the woman that I want to marry, devote myself to. But is that your mind just, making it up? Or is it really like God moving you into that direction and saying that that's your path?
Are there values you live by?
Yeah, absolutely. So my core values in my business, for example, are freedom, first and foremost, sovereignty, truth, one of the biggest values, and then also integrity. I'd say that's my biggest one. Integrity and alignment, It's one of my biggest fears as well, just getting it wrong. not doing exactly what God wants me to do.
Right, okay.
I mean, that is obviously like a human aspect of me that is just afraid of, like a perfectionist, inner perfectionist. Freedom, integrity, devotion, it's a big one. Yeah, devoting myself to God, to living in integrity. Yeah.
How would you say those values play out in your relationships?
The more I embody these values, I mean, you can have values that you want to live up to, but then there's a gap between those. The more they line up with my actions, with what I embody truly, the more I see them reflected in the physical reality with someone such as yourself. That is a direct reflection of just me seeing, okay, I'm living up to my values, and all of a sudden people like Maxi come into my life where I'm like, that guy is important. That's like a guy that lives in my heart, someone that shares similar values, that embodies, that has the same degree of integrity, sort of. Also, human aspects, we are not perfect, neither one of us. And that's just beautiful. It's just beautiful to see that more coming alive in my relationships at the moment. And also seeing that the more I live up to these values, the more I see truly the relationships that I'm in with my brother, my family, my parents, my best friend, Sebastian, how they are also developing. As I develop, they develop. Yeah. And it's not so much like, oh man, I would want this person to do X, Y, Z better. It's more like, the more I shift, the more space I can hold for them to really like show a different side of themselves that I might have been afraid before. Or all of the sudden, like with my brother, I'm noticing this a lot at the moment. Like I'm evolving and he's evolving as well. And then we meet on a different level, higher level, where it's like, man, 2 years ago it was this, and now it's like this, and I'm super proud of this. Like development that's happening, just this evolution. And it's happening organically, which is something I'm very fond of. It's also a value that I'm living up to. Is like goes hand in hand with alignment and integrity. It's just the organic evolution. You can evolve by pushing and putting in work, which has a place in time, but just this organic unfoldment that people just sort of flow into your life. The work that you're offering is growing out of you rather than you're forcing it into the world. Yeah, that's super important to me. And I see that in yourself as well, with like the men's circle and the work that you're offering. It's like slowly but surely just like growing out of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It is. It is. It's funny. Yeah, it's funny that. Yeah, it's funny that you feel like, yeah, the death and the rebirth, the light and the shadow is very close to each other, and it needs this like severing of all the parts and all the things that you are not, in order to become what you are meant to become. And so that becomes very practical. Like, this room I'm living in right now, this here, where we are right now, what it is that I'm making my living with, all of these very tangible things, the setup of my life, it needs to adjust to the mission I'm on.
Yeah.
And that is something that's a price that you, to get there, I needed to burn down a lot of old stuff. And so that involves people, places, and circumstances. That includes big fields, big things that stood in the way. Not in a bad way, not like it all has been necessary, but in order, to like, and I'm grateful for the conversation we're having and all the beautiful input you gave. That also shines a light on what I always refer to as like this inner knowing, this voice that, the calling, and to be sensitive and aware of that knowing and voice. And that always has been, it's been very gladly has been always very close to me. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't push it away. So I needed to basically, I was like, okay, again, oh, shit. Okay, now let me do some adjustments again, and then we can follow it again. So there were parts and times, in my life where I was a little bit sort of like detouring.
Yeah.
And then there's just no way. I have to get back on track, But it comes with a price. It comes with a price in a worldly sense. Giving up comfort, giving up many things, but then gaining so much on the other side.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. And yeah, something else that comes alive for me is, and I feel like it's also like with you, it seems like it's a very fortunate and a beautiful evolution when you describe the relationship with your brother, for example, and that you both grow.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess, if that doesn't happen, if only one part is growing, or like one part is, substantially growing more, or it's growing just in a different direction.
Yeah.
I feel like it's then that's where the boundaries come in then, and that's where I feel like, loving, fierce and loving boundaries come in, It's just like this, like, okay, when, if there's like a imbalance of like affection needed or something, then it's like, okay, I see there's like a difference in the relationship happening, the dynamic going into different directions. And it's okay. And that's something to, it's bittersweet sort of, it's like this, okay, at the end of the day, it's more about than just myself. So it's like this mission I'm on, I like, as the sacrifice in some sense, like I need to sacrifice certain aspects and sometimes relationships in order to really grow and evolve. And I mean, wow, that I'm saying this myself now after also what we've discussed yesterday, you know, where also it's like people will do this to you, to me, to you, to us, you know. It's not something only you do. It's also something, sometimes people will do this with you, you know, in order for me to pursue my dreams, in order to do
Yeah.
what I want to do. I need to distance myself. I need to go a different route. So yeah, it's important there. Who has made a difference in your life that you want to share in this space?
Oh man, there's so many people coming to mind. So many people.
Yeah, that's why. Whomever you feel called to share about.
Well, you obviously. I mean, we've talked about the men's circle and just our relationship and sharing, just having like a man on a similar wavelength, and that's been just so healing. Yeah. But then again, there's so many. I feel like there's a couple I want to bring up. Verena König, for example, trauma expert in Germany. One of those people that really, yeah, it's like when I purchased her training, there wasn't this strong pull. It was just this, okay, this is what I have to do. And then it's like, woof. And the moment that whole training started, I had like tears in my eyes just from the way she, like the way she thoroughly presents the information and like the things before the training even started and the emails and like the whole package. And so I'm very, very, very grateful for her work. Just like inviting me into the world of somatics, trauma informed way of like, yeah, leading, coaching people, like providing holding space for people. That has been pivotal in my life. And it's been such a beautiful, yeah, like culmination is not the right word, but like bringing together of everything that I knew before, like with the different aspects that you have in shamanic work, for example, in like more mystical traditions. I find that now in the parts work as well, where you're talking about like scientifically about different inner parts of yourself, which just fit so well in my previous worldview. And it's just like such a beautiful topping, like a more refined way of how I can express myself, also in a more grounded way. So her is definitely someone I want to honor. And oh man, there's a couple of people I'm thinking here about. It's also just nature, just the sun and nature. We talked about the sun yesterday. An ode to the sun.
I will burn you all, motherfucker.
Oh, yeah. Nature is just always there for me. Then there's also Pilar Lesko, one of my mentors, like my business mentors. Not close mentors, but just her work in general. Frequency first business is what she calls her, like what she does. So yeah, the frequency, the form follows the frequency. So the frequency you embody is sort of dictating the shape, the form of your business. And that's like a principle that I follow. It's like, okay, how can I not just adhere to what's currently a trend, what's how you do things currently, but how can I artistically, poetically express myself in my business and like build the foundations of my business in a way that is just super soulfully aligned. And that is really important for me, because it's one way to build a business in an infrastructure that is already like given and just follow the neat 5 steps formula, or to like carve out your own business. And you're therefore creating an infrastructure that is life-giving success, that is nourishing you, instead of success that is depleting you, like that it's costing you life force energy. You're putting it in, but it's not giving, like there's no proper symbiosis happening there. So that's one of my values as well. Just like the steps that I'm taking have to be life-giving. Otherwise, it makes no sense.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So Pilar Lesko, an ode to her. Beautiful, beautiful individual. Yeah.
That's very nice. It's very beautiful. I love that question because it's, I don't know, for me it's like really shining a light on the fact that, you know, it's very philosophical, but like there is nothing new to create. Like, it's a bit controversial, but like I feel like, you know, each one of us is a result of all the experiences that happen for us and to us and with us and through us. And so are the people that we meet, you know, they're all adding to our experience. And from, for example, like when creating music, there's no new music to be invented, in the sense of like, you know, all chords have been played, but it's like your unique arrangement of these chords based on all the influences that you have absorbed, which then were given to us by God or the universe. So there's not like this right that I have created something. I just, you know, found a way of putting the pieces together in a new way, you know, in a unique way. And so at the same time, obviously, it's all very highly individual and all unique and it's all like handmade, everything that we do. And this is also what Rick Rubin always says, right? With art and creativity, it's all an offering to God. And at the same time, you know, we are so much dependent on the input that we are given by people as well.
Yeah.
And so like I find there's so much value to bring this to the surface, you know, who inspired me, who
definitely,
you know, who I'm learning from, you know. I feel like there's so much in there,
being so present. And that's something that I was missing in the spiritual communities and New Age communities, where people were claiming to channel and doing certain things, and it's all like, oh, this is like divinely coming through, but there's no naming of like, who is this founded by. Like, there's so much influence. Like, for example, if I'm talking about the winner of tolerance, I'm obviously naming Dr. Daniel Siegel because he's the one who invented it. If I'm talking about more of the neurosystemic integration part, it's Verena König that this comes from. And just weaving these people into the conversations that we're bringing up when we're teaching people, when we are interacting with people, I find that is so necessary. Just honoring where the information originates from. Yeah.
And originates. It's like, okay, it came through them.
Yeah.
And now you are putting that all into the work you're doing today. And so, you know, that unique mix of König and this guy and this woman and Pilar Lesko and like your family and whomever, you know, and it's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I feel like, you know, sometimes I feel like it needs space to be expressed, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I feel. Yeah.
So interesting. And that creates this beautiful symphony. I like how you talked about the creative act there from Rick Rubin, and Pilar Lesko is talking about that and offering certain things that are very similar. One of her programs is called Fine Tune, one of her first programs. And it's all about how can you become sort of a clean and clear vessel for like God, for life to move through you. How can you play that? Like, by playing, I mean, how can we bring it into form? That is how we play. And for that, you have to fine tune your antennas so you can receive properly. And then the information lands and is being digested and integrated, and then we move forward and we play and we play. we birth things into reality.
Yeah, it's exactly Rick Rubin's, what he basically describes as like the DNA of an artist. It's just like his or her ability to pick up on the frequencies of the universe, the great mystery. Like, how can you facilitate in and outside an environment that enables you to pick up on the frequencies and impulses that the universe is providing us with constantly.
I love that.
All the time, and it's just like, as a good artist is just someone who managed to fine-tune his inner instrument. It's like a radio channel to dial in the right channel. So it's just like, that's where I need to be. And then boom, information is coming through. I can put it into words. I can put it into a melody. Here it is. That's why here Michael Jackson also always said, I have to be quick with an idea, because if I don't execute on it fast enough, Prince will. Because the ideas are floating around. So
in the ether.
Yeah, exactly. So I find it a very beautiful sort of way of looking at it, because it's also like it takes away from this like individual right of anyone to claim, this is mine and this is yours. And at the same time, there's a place and a time to also honor people who really fine-tune this instrument. It's both, and it's very meta. And then it's like, okay, but then again, there are people who are just like, who have been doing a lot of work previously and who we can learn from. And I feel like this is also like this sense of entitlement that comes with the generation that we are living in. I feel like there's a lot of like respects to be paid to people that walked paths before us, and to pay respect to them. And this is also what we're doing so much with the men's work. It's like, honor your fucking lineage.
Yes.
Honor
and your ancestors,
as much pain as there was, you wouldn't be here without them.
Hundreds of people before you. They all survived.
Yeah, they all needed to survive in order for you to sit here.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, so, that needs honoring, that needs like addressing, needs to become present,
It's not so much just about like healing your ancestry, like the lineage and everything, like the trauma, transgenerational trauma that's passed on. It's also about look at how much strength is coming through your lineage. Those people on the battlefield, those women raising children's, multiple 10 children's. I mean, you have to be a woman to raise like a family on your own. There's a lot of strength in it. Obviously, it's one-sided, but I mean, they did the best they could at their time. There was no proper education. I mean, you couldn't talk about spirituality, that there was no such thing, So...
And at the same time, I feel like there was so much more lived spirituality than it is today. So the pendulum went from like embodied spirituality, just because, people were outside a lot. People were in contact with the elements. They were grounded. They were embodied, because there was just no other way, to now being in the complete opposite, where we have to artificially now introduce a lot of practices that allow us to, get out of this artificially sort of made up world, technology and everything, to return back.
Yeah.
And I feel like, it's again, not either or, it's both. It's important, speaking to the integration part, integrated masculine, initiated manhood, integrated manhood, both is needed. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And a little bit on that.
Yeah. One thing that just stick with me, you mentioned like cultivating the environment, like the container for the frequency to come in. Super interesting. Would you like, passing the mic to you, would you like to go down that path for a second, like explore it?
Right. Well, Yeah, I mean,
Like this space here is a testimony.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. So it originates from, I guess, like knowing yourself, self-awareness, self-knowledge, cultivating a deep knowing of how you as an instrument, as a vessel function and work, what you need, what do you need, very individual. And I found myself to be in a lot of like full of judgment towards people, places and circumstances who are different from mine. Whereas now it's just like, yeah, there is people who are striving in urban environments, for example. So I'm just not. And so without no judgment, that's just a fact.
I can relate so much.
And so like I used to think and feel like this is like a superior thing to come back to the nature, and no, like it's just different strokes for different folks, and so that's totally fine. And so I just found for me that like an urban environment works very well for me to be creative, which is the backbone of everything I'm doing. Like I'm just a very creative person in the sense of receiving information and putting it into action. That's just, I don't know, like some integral part of my DNA and how I work as this human being that I am. And so I'm like, okay, how do I facilitate an environment where this can take place? And then form follows function, then I start setting up my life around this inner knowing. So I'm like, okay, Bavaria. I like I'm not too far away from my family, which is important to me. But then at the same time, I'm far enough away so I can have I can create something on my own, and I'm not in the energetic field of them. I'm not in this dependency.
Right.
So it's like this balance between like accountability, responsibility that I also want to fulfill towards them. I want to be there for them energetically, but also physically, emotionally. But I also want to sever the cords of this parent-child relationship. And I'm standing on my own 2 feet. That's why I came here. On top of like the overall energetics of this place, where I'm just like, I know I want to be living on the ground floor. I know I want to be having a garden, and I wrote all of these things down. This is like not like woo-woo shit. Like this is just like proper, I don't know, I wrote it like thoughts, words, actions, Started up here with a knowing, I put it into words, and then I acted upon it, and that's how it came to be. And so to be in this space just allows me 30 square meters, that allows me to breathe. It allows me to sit down here, meditate, which for me is like an integral part of channeling stuff and like receiving information, going outside, being with the elements, being with the mountains, being with the water. All of those things help me. And then also to sever the cords of earning my money through technology. I completely sever this cord. There's nothing left of that anymore. I'm earning my money entirely through human interaction. There's no technology involved other than like sometimes taking an order on an iPhone. But that's it. That's the only technology I'm in touch with for the days or for the times where I'm working. And so I'm nourishing a part of myself that I know I need in order to create. Again, so it always comes back to like, how do I give myself the medicine that I need? Beautiful. Through people, places, circumstances. So those 3 contribute to filling up my cup. And, and then you have to start experimenting. And this is also the piece where I'm really wanting to improve or like further work on, is like to shake things up, to do things differently, to receive different results, because Rick Rubin talks about this all the time. There's like, in order to facilitate an environment that leads to a creative innovation or like a creative spark to come through in an artist, for example, in the studio, there's many ways you can go about that. You can, like, we talked about it yesterday, the context is important. So do I invite a different intention into the room? Like, okay, play this song and imagine you playing it for your mom. your performance will be very different than if you were just to play it for the producer that you know, or you introduce someone else into the room that you don't know, a stranger, completely different energy again. Introduce a man, introduce a woman, introduce an elder, introduce a child. All of these factors can influence the way that, you know, we carry ourselves, and we are able to create something. So I guess what I'm really sort of working on is creating an environment that at one stage is like comfortable and safe, and where I feel regulated. So, and introduce change gradually. So, because the world in and of itself is changing a lot, I feel like, without my doing. So just to adjust to that is in and of itself a challenge. But then again, I find like all the people that I really admire and who I really look up to and learn from, all of these people. So I'm looking over there, Michael Singer, for example, he's 70 something. He's a very curious person, and he knows that he doesn't know anything. And that insatiable hunger for like wisdom and knowledge, that is what makes me sort of like, who am I, 30 years of age, you know, who am I to say like, oh, I know already that this is not for me. You know, I want to reduce things that I'm looking on with that lens. I want to really sort of like, you know, like, yeah, okay, maybe I made an experience in the past that leads me to think, you know, that this is not for me, but maybe just the environment wasn't for me. Maybe just this particular set of circumstances wasn't for me. But let me just keep evolving with food. Food is a very, very tangible thing, you know. I don't, for example, like Indian cuisine per se so much. Maybe I just haven't tasted the right Indian food yet. So let me just continuously expose myself to Indian food, you know, or like to food that I don't usually eat, you know. And from that will come something, even if it's a stronger refusal or like a stronger resistance to something, that's also something, you know. So I feel like just doing things differently again and again and again, and exposing yourself to a different environment, different people, just doing things differently, gradually, you know, not entirely all the time, but just like, you know, like you say always, the titration, you know. And this is what I feel like, you know, because we are mammals, you know, we are, it's funny when we're sitting down at the dining table, right? When I asked you, where do you want to sit, you know, and you wanted to sit at the same place where you were sitting yesterday, and I was just like, yeah, let's just,
break up the pattern.
You know, break it up, you know,
Yeah.
and it will introduce maybe a different dynamic to the conversation. Who knows, you know? But that's what I found, you know, to be very useful when we're talking about an environment to create, change up the context, change up really the environment, change up your inner posture. Many things you can do, but like keep curious, stay open, stay, you know, I know that I don't know anything, and that's there's an innocence and a naivete towards the world that comes with that, but I feel like there's much to be gained from this kind of like going about it. One more thing I'm going to say to this, when it comes to relationships, also interesting, like, because our experiences, they forge us, they shape us.
Yeah.
And they help us to discern. And at the same time, like, am I still able to open up to the right person and trust and gift someone, you know, my attention and my presence and my love and my conscious awareness, although I've experienced hurt in the past, for example. So that's also something where I feel like it's important to staying open and to be open and have boundaries. Yeah, it's always both.
The dance.
Yeah, the dance.
Yeah,
man.
The continuous red thread that I'm hearing is just opening yourself, continuously, perpetually opening yourself again.
And with that, exactly, and now I'm activated, with that comes the need, like it's a necessity to then at the same time you're opening up so much. You need to step into the boundaries.
Right.
That's why this is so present, I guess, for you, for me, as people who are so open. That's why you need both.
Yeah, when
It's
you're
a
open,
logical
you need
consequence.
protection.
Exactly.
Right. It's like the feminine, masculine. You need your shield, and you need your. That's not the perfect analogy, but you need. Yeah, the feminine needs to be protected, like her innocence, her essence, like her life, and then you have the structure around it.
Exactly.
The masculine principle. Yeah.
That's why it is actually not like contradictive or something. It's actually complementary. You
Yeah.
need both.
Yeah.
Like the further open you are, the more boundaries you need.
Yeah.
The ability to set them, and be clear with your intention and to radically walk the path of truth. Yes, as you were describing it. That's the dance.
That's the dance.
That's the dance.
Yeah.
So, and I used to think like, it's either this or that.
Yeah, in the beginning of our journeys, it is, you're setting boundaries, and where are boundaries coming from? Like I said in the beginning, from your anger, you're like, I don't want this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you're using your anger. But this is like the baby boundaries that are sort of not in integrity, but it's part of your journey. Just
Exactly.
learning how far can I push? Like, okay, this is new to me. Like, this is my space. I'm protecting my needs. And then you learn, okay, I can also set boundaries from a place of wholeness. Like, this is as far as you go, and you don't have to use that much anger anymore. And that's super interesting. And it's that dance, and then opening yourself up again, and yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Like, yeah, exactly. And it's like I feel like it's like a muscle that you need to also. You need to put in the reps. You need to like continuously train, but then also really massage it, go into the softness again.
I like that. Yeah,
so you need to like, it's like this expansion and contraction, and both also I feel like need different flavors, like different. They need to be like plants that they need different watering nutrients. Yeah. So the expansion needs to be watered in a different way than the contraction,
Yeah.
So that's why working with men, working with women, it's like complementary,
Yeah.
you need to be taking a bath and lighting the candles and doing the sage thing and stuff. And sometimes you need to step in the ring and get punched in the face. Exactly. Hustling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing
nothing but a good hustle, just working, and then again softening yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, that beautiful dance. I love that.
Yeah, man.
There we go with bridging the worlds, feminine, masculine, softness, hardness, all of that.
That's it, man. That's it. All right. How do we drive this ship home? Yeah, we were speaking about it yesterday. Just as it's nearly like a ceremonial thing by now with the podcast. Towards the end, like the questions that come through. What are you proud of?
There we go. And it's clear. I'm proud of my continuous, it's not the right way to put it, but continuous effort into shining my light. That's one way of putting it. I'm proud of just me continuously stepping into like following my soul path. It's something that is so intrinsically within me, and I'm so proud of me just following that over and over and over again. It's like I told you yesterday, I have very little wiggle room in terms of just not following my highest path. It's like if I'm diverging just a little bit, life is going to slap me quite quickly, and me just continuously hitting rock bottom and then just building myself back up and dialing in and going like the full spectrum human experience, going for like the highest timeline. I like Pilar Lesko's quote on that, like destiny timeline or bust. And I'm really like following that devotionally, and then falling back down and getting back up. And I'm proud of that inner devotion to that path, I'd say.
That's beautiful.
Something that I can right now, with the experience of 8 years of walking this spiritual journey, if you want to put it that way, in those 8 years, falling down, getting back up, falling down, getting back up, and always, just following that inner knowing that I spoke of, not having that clear path yet laid out before me, but still pursuing the feeling. And it has become sort of my second nature. And the more I trust it, the more I'm trusting it. And that's what I'm really proud of. You could also say my relationship to God. It's what I'm proud of, cultivating that in this day and age. Yep. There's lots to come.
What do you feel like the world needs more of?
Devotion. True devotion. Commitment. Not half-heartedness. Gene Key 29. There's so much half-heartedness. So many people. You can't blame them for it, because there's so much this world offers. You can do this, you can do that. Back in the days, if you wanted to study medicine, you had to devote your entire life to that study, like 50 years ago. And nowadays it's like, you can just do this, and then you can enter medical school like this. And just as an example, I mean, there's just so many opportunities, but from that high stimulation and high choice, how do you say that? Many choices, there is little commitment, little devotion. And I feel devotion is something that we need, just committing. And by commitment, I don't mean like going down this road until death do us apart. I mean like committing to what feels in alignment.
One thing at a time, I feel like.
Yeah. And just like 100% giving it your all. I love the podcast that I listened to, Richard Rudd, featuring Rick Rubin, where they said, Richard Rudd said, it's like you can't be devoted 99%. Like if you're 99% devoted, you're not devoted. You're not committed. It's either you are pregnant or you're not. There's no in between. And this is what I feel the world needs the most right now. It's really just following your path and sticking to it. And by that, I don't mean like a rigid path, like this line, but following life and where it's leading you. And if more people would do that, life would be a lot more beautiful. Connections like this emerge from devotion.
Thank you for this conversation. That's beautiful.
Thank you for having me, Maxi.
Hey, beautiful listener, you have made it all the way through. And I want to take a moment to say thank you. And you can do me an enormous favor. It's all I'm going to ever ask from you. And that is to go to your podcast app right now. And if you enjoyed the episode, give the podcast a 5-star rating. If you want to write 1-2 words or sentences, even more powerful, even better. Thank you, already in advance. And also while you're at it, just click on that follow button, on that bell notification so that you never miss a new episode. All of that just contributes and it helps me to increase the reach of the podcast. That means I can attract bigger guests, and that means I can deliver more powerful episodes. So it's a tiny thing. I'm only gonna ask this little favor of you ever, not more. 10-15 seconds of your time, a couple of clicks, that's it. Makes a huge difference for me as a creator. So thank you so much.